welcome back to my channel. Today I am finally filming my 2016 reading challenge update. If you didn't see my first video about the challenge, I will link it down below so you can get up to date on what it is, what I've already read. Basically, this is a reading challenge that I found through the Modern Mrs. Darcy blog. There are 12 different categories, one for each month. You can read one book in each category. You can read numerous books in each category and really challenge yourself like I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing it. I read 4 books at the beginning of the year and I got off to a fast start. I was feeling good, but I really burned myself out on reading, so I had to take a little break because I was just not feeling books, which for me is like a heartache, but I had to give myself a break because I just couldn't, I wasn't concentrating well. I didn't want to read, I just wasn't in the mood. So I gave myself a break and now I'm back at it. I have read 4 books since then. I will be talking about all 4, but mainly the first 3, which belong to the Elixir trilogy by Hilary Duff, because I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I know it's old news, but bear with me because I just really want to talk about it. Maybe some of you have thoughts about it and you want to share. Feel free to do so in the comments. The first one is Elixir. The second book is Devoted. And the third and final book is True. In the first book, we're introduced to our female protagonist, Clee. She is part of a famous family because her mother is a politician and her father was a doctor. He went missing on an assignment and has been pronounced dead, even though Clee still believes there's a chance he's alive, but she doesn't talk about it because she doesn't want to upset her mother, who is trying to move on, or has moved on. Some of the other characters include her best friend Raina, whose mother is head of the stables and the horses on property. They have a little house on the property, so her and Clee have grown up together. There's Ben, who worked for Clee's father, and now he hangs around because he's best friends with Clee, and he does eventually get hired by her mother. And then there's Sage. Who is Sage? Clee has become a pretty famous photojournalist under a fake name, and after a recent assignment, she's looking at all her photos and realizes that in every single one there is a male being. He's not visible at first glance, but if you really look, he's in every photo. After many events and talks and things like that, she discovers that her father and Ben were researching the Elixir of Life, which makes people immortal. Sage is immortal because he was given the Elixir of Life, and he is bound to Clee. He's not a guardian angel, although it appears to be so in the beginning. He's just a human who was given the Elixir of Life, and him and Clee are soulmates, so he's always there in the photos. This is why they're bound together. In Sage's first life, his original life before he drank the elixir, Clee and Ben were alive as well. They were present in their first incarnations, I guess you could call it. Basically, Sage met Clee, they fell in love, they're soulmates, they're inseparable. Ben, without realizing it, betrays Sage. Clee dies tragically. Sage is given the Elixir of Life as a form of torture to see if it works, but obviously he can't die, so he ends up living. And he's stuck in this cycle where Ben and Clee always come back and the same thing happens. Sage meets Clee, they fall in love, they're inseparable, they're soulmates, Ben betrays Sage, even if he doesn't mean to, and Clee dies tragically. And it happens over and over again, and that is the base of this story. How do we break this cycle? As it goes on, it turns out that they have to protect Sage because his blood is the Elixir of Life. And there are 2 groups who want him in their custody. One wants to kill him so they can get the elixir out of him. The other group wants to kill him to break the curse that is upon their family. There's something called insta-love that a lot of people hate in young adult books. Basically, it means that a boy and a girl meet each other and fall in love at a rapid pace, and it's a bit ridiculous. This is sort of insta-love, even though it's a sort of unique situation. I actually really liked the first book because it was different from anything I've ever read. It wasn't my favorite book, but it was interesting, and it did make me want to read the second book. I read the second book, and I was like, yeah, this is getting good. What I really liked is that it was the same story, but each book felt different. It didn't feel like the same thing, if that makes sense. It was still the same story, but there was progression, and each felt like they were telling a different part of the story in a way that each book was different enough to keep my interest. And I was really excited to read the third one. Unfortunately, this is where the love affair ends because I am really disappointed in the third book and the conclusion. This is where the spoilers might come in, so if you haven't read this series and you want to, you might want to stop watching. Sorry. I feel like the third book built up to this moment and it ended happy, and there were a lot of things that I was still questioning. The dad was talked about a lot in the first book, and I believe a little bit in the second book, but by the end of the third book, there was no more mention of him, even though Clee truly believed he was still alive. There was no mention of what even happened to him. Which I know, that's true. When people go missing, it's not always resolved. But it was just nothing. It was like we were supposed to forget that the dad was the one who researched the elixir in the first place and found out about Sage and Clee being soulmates. Am I just supposed to forget that all that was talked about and, forget that he's missing and we still don't know what happened to him? That was a real letdown. And then the whole Sage and Clee thing, I don't know. This was one of those stories that would have benefited from a tragic ending. The whole thing in the third book is basically like Clee's in more danger when she's with Sage. Their relationship is putting her in more danger, and yet she sticks with him, and I don't know. I was really upset that I didn't like the third book, but I didn't. I have to be honest. I didn't. It was a letdown. The fourth and final book I have read so far is The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket from the Series of Unfortunate Events series. I'm not going to talk a lot about this because I have 12 more books to read in the series, and once I finish it, then I will discuss it in detail. But yes, I do love this series. Even at 22 years of age, it still keeps my interest. It's so interesting, but like I said, I'll go more into detail once I've finished the entire series. And last but not least, I will tell you what I'm currently reading. Obviously, The Reptile Room, which is book 2 in the Series of Unfortunate Events by the great Lemony Snicket. And finally, so happy to be talking about this, I am reading The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've waited so long to read this series, and if you're wondering why I was waiting, I don't know. I have so many books to read, and sometimes I get so excited that I don't even read because I just like being excited. But I'm finally reading it. I am almost done. I am on chapter 12 currently, and there are 19 chapters in this book. I won't go into detail once again because I want to finish the series, but I will say that I am loving it so far. Loving it. Love it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will film another update as soon as I finish more books. I will leave the list of categories down below along with my current list of books that I'm planning on reading, as well as the books I've already read. It is subject to change, but I do have an idea of what I want to read in each category. It's been a bunch of fun, and I highly recommend that you join. It's not too late. It's only April. you've still got plenty of time. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to receive notifications every time I upload. I will see you in my next video. Bye!